Hey guys, what is going on? I hope you all are doing well today. Elliot here and welcome back to The Fragrance Well. So, it's part of the human condition. When we see things that are symmetrically beautiful to us, have some sense of beauty, some sense of wonderment, we automatically think every aspect of that item, that object, that person is also good. Now, as human beings, we have a little bit of investigative skills to find out that that's not necessarily always the case. Matter of fact, most of the time, it's not the case. But we do the same thing even with fragrance bottles. At least I know I do. If I see a fragrance bottle that looks gorgeous, I do kind of have this unrealistic expectation that the fragrance is going to be just as good as the bottle looks. So that pretty much is the inspiration for today's video. The best bottles, do they produce the best fragrances? We all know that is not necessarily true. Matter of fact, we know that really has nothing to do with how good the fragrance smells. But you can't deny that some fragrance presentations are just to die for. And if the fragrance is as good as it is advertised, it just makes you love it just a little bit more. So here's what I did. I had my wife pick out 10 bottles that she thought looked the best, or I told her pick out the best looking bottles to you. She actually threw a little bit of a curveball in there and picked out the best and the most interesting. So some of these in here are choices I would not put as the best bottle because of that alone, but you're gonna see once we get into the video. So before we get started, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel if you do like the content, and hit that bell icon so you can be notified when I upload new videos. Let's get into it. Alright guys, let's go ahead and get into it. So, the first fragrance on the list is going to be from the house of Azzaro, and this is Wanted by Night. Azzaro's Wanted by Night. As I said, these are the bottles my wife picked out. I would assume this one falls under the interesting category for her, not necessarily the best looking. And I'll give her a little bit of credit. It does look like a revolver for a gun, so that is pretty interesting. So I'll give it that much. That being said, it's not a bad bottle design by any means. You could say it's a little bit tacky, but it is well constructed. It feels good in the hand. The atomizers on these are pretty nice. I haven't sprayed it in a while, but from what I remember, I don't think I ever complained about the atomizer. Nice click-on cap. The color of the juice is nice. And the fragrance itself, if you're not familiar with it, this is a very spicy, somewhat smoky, sweet tobacco fragrance. Very nice fragrance. Really kind of took the fragrance world by storm, given how different it was from the original Wanted fragrance, which is pretty much their version of an Invictus style fragrance. I still think this is the best Wanted line fragrance out of all of them. There have been plenty of flankers that have come out after this one, and I do think those are probably a little bit more popular with the community at large and the populace in general, but to me this is still the best fragrance creation in the Wanted line, and I do think it does hold weight against how the bottle looks. So I will give my wife a thumbs up on this one. This is a interesting fragrance bottle. I don't think it's the best, but it is interesting, and the fragrance itself is very good. So once again, from the house of Azzaro, this is Wanted by Night. Alright, so this next one's coming from by Kilian, and this is Angel Share. By Kilian, Angel Share. So Angel Share is a part of the liqueurs collection from the house of by Kilian, and all of their bottles do look like this. So the bottle, it's in and of itself is not super unique because there's other fragrances from the same line, granted, that use this bottle design. But this one is by far the most popular in that collection in the community, probably overall. And I do think the bottle looks stunning. It doesn't have the best cap on it. The cap is pretty much kind of just thick plastic. I think I pulled it off like 2 times and it held on nicely. Now it literally will just fall right off. I can't grab it from the top. So the top is not that great, but the texture within it to make it kind of look like a fancy cognac glass, and especially with this juice in particular, that dark color that it has, it looks like a small bottle of cognac. So excellent bottle design. I would have put this on the list for myself as one of the best bottles, and the fragrance inside absolutely lives up to it. This fragrance is super delicious. This is a sweet gourmand fragrance, has some kind of smoky nuttiness to it, of course a little bit of a booziness to it, a lot of spice, and quite a bit of sweetness as well. I think I might make this my scent of the evening tonight. I got a gig tonight and I've been trying to decide what I want to wear, but this one might be on the short list. But all that being said, Yes, this one is definitely a thumbs up for a great looking bottle and great fragrance on the inside of it. Once again from the house of by Kilian, this is Angel Share. Next up, coming from the house of Jean-Paul Gaultier, this is Le Male Les Parfums. Jean-Paul Gaultier's Le Male Les Parfums. So I'm not really sure why my wife picked this one. I mean, still smells great, but I got, 3 Le Male fragrances. I got the original, this one, and the new Elixir. Personally, I would have picked the Elixir just because of that gold color scheme that it has and the fact that you can actually see the fragrance in between the lines. But I guess she thought this one just looked a little bit more classy, maybe. I don't know. But hey, it was her choice. And regardless of all of that, this is a great fragrance. Elixir has kind of overshadowed this one to me as being my favorite of the Le Male flanker fragrances. But I still definitely love the smell of this one. I don't even need to pick up the strip again. I can just smell it in the room. I probably should have held off on spraying it because this one is definitely a room filler. This is going to be a powdery, spicy take on the Le Male DNA featuring quite a bit of iris. This one still has the lavender, but they kind of did away with the mint in this version. Replaced it with what I would just say is probably the cardamom note and the iris. And there's lots of vanilla and kind of some, well, they list it as oriental wood, so probably just a concoction of a lot of woods in this fragrance. I will say that I do like the black color scheme that the Le Male Les Parfums flanker has, and I think the fragrance kind of matches up with it. You could see yourself, let's just say wearing some dark clothes or something wearing this fragrance. So yeah, another one. Good choice in my opinion. Good bottle design overall, and a great fragrance on the inside. So once again, from the house of Jean-Paul Gaultier, we have got Le Male Elixir. All right, next up, coming from the house of Arabian Oud, we have got Majestic. Arabian Oud's Majestic. Now this one here should not be a question of this being a stunning bottle. As a matter of fact, the only problem is it pulls the collar off. That's the only problem. The cap is so secure that it'll actually pull the collar off. There we go. Yeah. So so that's the only downside. But other than that, this is a very well made bottle, and I do think that the juice on the inside is excellent. If you've ever been to an Arabian Oud boutique or get the chance to go, you will pretty much see right away that almost all, not all of them, but almost all of their fragrance bottles are stunning. They definitely do take into account how the fragrance is presented. When you go into the boutique, they pretty much have all, if not most of the fragrances displayed around the entire store. So you can't help but notice they've got some pretty decent bottle designs in here. Now, Arabian Oud is an amazing fragrance house, but they are gonna have their hits and misses just like anybody, and especially because they have so many fragrances, you're not gonna like all of them. But I do like this one. However, I don't think this one's necessarily for everybody, but this is going to be a woody, kind of floral, kind of sweet fragrance. I kind of call it a fresh oud. There is oud in here, but it is definitely a fresh iteration of an oud fragrance. Some very strong florals in the top. Kind of has this kind of hint of spiciness to it, but it's mostly floral, mostly bright, and a fresh wood fragrance, fresh oud wood fragrance. Anyways, yes, this one definitely gets a thumbs up for me for being an amazing bottle and a great fragrance on the inside. Got a lot of flankers to this one too, and they change the color scheme for each one, kind of like Le Male does, and those two are also very good. So once again, from the house of Arabian Oud, this is Majestic. All right, and since we're talking about Arabian Oud, we might as well go ahead and talk about what is probably their most well-known, most popular fragrance. We got Rasala. Arabian Oud's Rasala. Now, I mean, that bottle design is captivating. I mean, look at that. Who would have thought of something like this? Be careful with it. I imagine if you twist this the wrong way, this will probably just break. But the bottle and the glass itself is pretty hefty, so I think it can withstand most impacts. This fragrance though, saffron, rose, vanilla, oud, and chocolate. That's all it is, and it is done very well. I do think the saffron can be a bit strong when you first spray it on, but after about 10-15 minutes at the most, it smooths out and you get that chocolate, you get that rose oud combination and the sweetness with the vanilla, and it just smells delicious. I mean, let's just be real. Anybody that's gonna display their fragrances in a way for people to see, you gotta kind of have this one in sight somewhere. It's gonna catch people's eye. So I think this one is an easy thumbs up for me for being a great fragrance bottle, and yes, very good fragrance on the inside of it as well. Once again, from Arabian Oud, this one is Rasala. All right, next up, coming from the house of Kajal, this is Lamar. Kajal Lamar. Okay, so do I have to convince anybody that that is not a stunning fragrance bottle? Look at the detail in it, man. It's crazy. So this is another house where a lot of the fragrances come in the same bottle shape, but they all have a different design on them, different color schemes. So this is just another house that does really good with presentation in my mind. And most of the fragrances are amazing as well. This one definitely does not disappoint. This is probably their most well-known fragrance as well, most popular within the community. Definitely a very successful fragrance for them in general. So this one is a pineapple, kind of sparkly red fruit fragrance, I kind of like to call it, or compare it to like a rosé pineapple flavored sparkling champagne or sparkling wine or something like that. It's accompanied with quite a bit of floral notes and accords and has a nice bit of sweetness to it, but it's not super thick or syrupy, so it works really well for warmer temperatures as well as cooler ones. So no doubt about it with this one. Thumbs up on the bottle. I mean, this one definitely catches my eye just about every time I look at my fragrance cabinet, and excellent juice on the inside as well. Once again, from the house of Kajal, this is Lamar. All right, next up, coming from the house of Zaharoff, we have got Second Soul. Zaharoff, Second Soul. I do apologize. I did the best I could to get the fingerprints off of it. I just don't have the best materials in here to do so, but man, I do think this bottle is very interesting and stunning. The whole mirrored thing on it is definitely a different take. It's certainly not a secret that some fragrance bottles are fingerprint magnets. This one I think is definitely taking the cake on that. But to have it literally act as a mirror, and the box too also has a mirror on it, it's a literal mirror, is very interesting and I think very creative. Shout out to Justin Copeland at Stay Fresh Productions. I'm guessing that was a creative direction choice for him. This fragrance is a modern take on the classic gentleman's aromatic fougere barbershop style fragrance, which I am a big fan of. And frankly, any fragrance that has that kind of baseline DNA and gets free with it and takes it in a different direction and does it well, I typically like. This one certainly does that, and it has done it in a way that I have not experienced yet, so I'm a big fan of this fragrance. And I think the whole mirror thing has to do with the man, making sure he's dressed well, presenting himself well before he presents himself to the public, and you got a good gentleman's fragrance to go along with that vibe. So yes, in my opinion, I think this is a good fragrance bottle. I know the shape of Zahara fragrances also tend to resemble this, but this one does kind of have its own characteristic to it. So yes, good fragrance bottle, great juice on the inside. Once again, from Zaharoff, this is Second Soul. All right, next up, coming from the house of Tommy Bahama, we have got Saint Kitts. Tommy Bahama, Saint Kitts. I'm also not really sure why my wife chose this one. Guess it just kind of caught her eye. Now the cap on this is about as cheap as it gets. I mean, this has no weight to it, no heft to it. Does click into place though, holds on relatively well. I wouldn't chuck it. But other than that, the bottle is solid, and I do have to give nods to the color scheme. That blue, that deep, like midnight blue almost with a kind of a violet kind of tinge coming through to it, is definitely a really good color scheme. So I give it nods for that. Otherwise, the bottle shape, I don't care for too much. That being said, the juice on the inside, it's not going to be the most high quality thing you ever smelled, but given that it's an eau de cologne, it does smell awesome. I mean, definitely puts you in a vacation mindset, puts you on the mindset of being on a boat, being on a beach, just being out in the sun. It is a great fragrance for a really affordable price. You gotta give nods to it for that. You can spray it as much as you want. It's not going to offend anybody. Yes, it's not gonna last that long. Like I said, it's an eau de cologne, but it does smell really, really good. This one has an aquatic vibe to it, kind of a sea salt kind of vibe. some fruits, citrus fruits on the top. There is a very nice accord of star fruit in here. I do think it did capture that relatively well. And a little bit of ambergris and musk on the dry down. Very nice fragrance. Really just the Tommy Bahama fragrances in general. They're meant to give you that vacation vibe. This one certainly does that. And I do think the bottle is okay. It would not have made my list personally, but the bottle is okay, but juice on the inside, very good, especially for the price. Once again, this is Tommy Bahama's Saint Kitts. All right, next up, coming from the house of Givenchy, this is Pi. Givenchy Pi. Kind of a older classic, if you will. Fragrance is still around. I mean, so you got to kind of give it nods for that. This one is kind of a benzoin heavy, kind of green, a little bit of orange flavoring in there. Just really nice kind of gentleman's fragrance with a different take on it. As far as the bottle design goes, I do give it nods for being interesting. You know, I don't know, some people might think this looks great, others might think it looks tacky. You know, you do have the little thing there to kind of complete the whole pie vibe to it. But I do give it nods for being very interesting, definitely unique. Certainly haven't seen any other bottles like this. I do like the design in it. It's built well. But overall, yeah, I think this is a pretty good fragrance given for what it is. And, you know, it's one that is kind of times past, but I do think the bottle is pretty decent and pretty good juice on the inside, especially for the price you can get it for these days. Once again, from the house of Givenchy, this is Pi. All right, last but not least, coming from the house of Moschino, this is Toy Boy. Moschino's Toy Boy. Now, I am convinced my wife picked this bottle because it's interesting, because I never would put this personally on a best bottles list. This bottle is about as tacky as it gets, and the fact that I got the 100 ml makes it even worse, because look how huge it is. So, yeah, it's definitely a downvote on the bottle for me. But I will give it an upvote for it being interesting. It is an interesting bottle. It does captivate your attention. But the fragrance on the inside, I can understand why a lot of people don't like it. It is very polarizing. This is a very spicy rose fragrance accompanied by some fruity pear in there. A lot of aroma chemicals, primarily giving off an ambery vibe to it. So not necessarily the most authentic smelling either, but I do think it is a very good creative fragrance. Definitely a daring fragrance, particularly for the designer marketplace. So I do give it good nods for that. And I think the bottle was kind of meant to help aid in that fact that it's being a very daring and different fragrance. So I do give it up both for that, but ultimately it just looks tacky to me. I mean, come on. So interesting fragrance bottle, yes. Good fragrance on the inside, yes, but total downvote on it being a good bottle, in my opinion. So once again, from the house of Moschino, we've got Toy Boy. All right, guys, that's the end of this video. That was 10 fragrances that have either great bottle designs or at least interesting bottle designs, and I gave my thoughts on what I thought about the juice on the inside as it correlates to how the bottle looks. Let me know down in the comments below, what's a fragrance that you think has an awesome bottle and then the juice on the inside backs up how good that bottle looks? And what's one time when you thought a bottle was really, really nice, but the fragrance did not really sit well with you? I appreciate you guys watching all the way until the end. Remember to be well and smell well, and I will see you in the next episode of The Fragrance Well. Have a good one.